Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have James W. Smith. James is an inspirational or motivational speaker, an author of 3 books, which can be found at dealbyme.com. He has expertise in legal awareness, conflict resolution, and finances, and has taught seminars to many, including inmates on death row. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you.
It's very good to have you. Normally, whenever I see someone with, let's say, motivational experience, I get a little bit excited because I like to know what the message is. I like a good pump up. So the scenario is someone you know, maybe an acquaintance or something like that, is maybe a bit down. They got their body language is a bit down, and you feel like they might be receptive to your message. The question is, what do you say to them?
Well, what I say to them is a couple of things. I want them to know that they should never give up. I also want them to know that, the darkest hour is always just before dawn. I tell them to make sure they confront whatever source it is that they feel like they have to deal with. I also want them to know, especially if they've gone through some difficulties, like maybe just coming out, confinement. Since I've been in that situation, I want them to be able to accept responsibility. I want them to practice humility. And I'm also doing a podcast that I really talk about encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. So it's important to make certain that not only you tell them these things, but it's also important to tell them to be encouraged, to be inspired. Don't let anything hold you down, that you can make it regardless, So those are the things that I like to share, Don't let your circumstances, be an excuse, because sometimes we allow all of that to get the best of us. And I want them to know that no, you can rise above your situation. That's basically what I shared with people that I'm talking with.
Well, thank you for that. And you mentioned encouragement. I feel like I certainly thrive on encouragement. I don't know whether it's, should we say, the times that we're in now, or you found it to be consistent the whole way along. But do you feel like it is needed, your message is needed now more than ever, or has it been fairly consistent?
Well, I think it's perhaps been fairly consistent. It's been consistent primarily because of my background. And even for the last 30, 40 years, that's what I've talked about, because I was a lawyer, I was a gambler, I served some time in prison as a result of a crime, but I came out and I knew what I had to do. My mom told me that if I lay down in a ditch, people are going to come by and continue to kick dirt on me. If I put my head in the sand, they were going to push my head further into the sand. So what you need to do is get up, and you'll find that some of these same people will give you a helping hand. So that's been my concept ever since 1986. I just believe that you cannot allow any force to hold you down. You got to believe in yourself. You got to stay motivated, and you've got to stay encouraged, and you got to stay inspired. And if you do that, I believe you can be transformed. And I went through that process. So that's what I talk about when I'm talking to individuals. And even on my podcast, when I'm interviewing folk on the podcast, I always say I want somebody who can share an encouraging word, can share an inspiring word to listeners of my podcast, because that's what I'm about. And that's what I like doing. And I think I've been pretty good at it.
I don't doubt that. And your story that you mentioned, when I was, going through the introduction and everything, I was wondering what I was going to speak to you about first, because there's lots of things that I'd like to talk to you about. But in terms of your story, whatever you feel is relevant, would you like to share a bit about that process? Because I like to see sort of people where they faced some adversity, but they're through it and they can share those lessons with other people.
Oh, sure, and I'll make it as short as I possibly can. But I grew up as an ordinary young man, finished high school, went off to college, went off to law school, finished law school six six years because I did what we call a combined program. Got out. I passed the bar at an early age. As a matter of fact, when I started practicing law in my hometown, I was the first and only African American practicer in my hometown in 1971. I began practicing, got into some gambling with some older guys, and I kind of messed up. But at the time when I started practicing law, I was not only the only African American lawyer practicing in my hometown, but I was also the youngest African American practicing in the state of North Carolina. At that time, I was 26 years of age. Now, what happened? I just messed up. Gambling got the best of me, and I ended up committing a serious crime. Went off to prison. And I don't mind telling you the crime. The crime was bank robbery because my I went off to prison, stayed in prison for 5 years, came out, and of course, began pulling my life back together. Was called into the ministry, went back to school, got my seminary training, received my master's of divinity, got a doctorate of ministry, and I pastored the same church for 32 years, 2 months short of 33 years. Just retired at the end of 22. And of course, even now, for the past 7 months, my home church called me to serve as their interim because they lost their pastor abruptly uh, at the age of 67 years of age. So I've been with them now for the last 7 months. So I know what you can do when you don't give up. In spite of what you've gone through, you can make it if you just put your head to the grind, I say, and just say, look, nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to do it. And that's what I did. And I, even when I'm doing my interviews, I even share with my guests some of the same concept. And most of them also have had some situations that they've fought through. Uh, it has not always been somebody who's been confined, but people going through challenges. There have been struggles. Business folks who have gone bankrupt, but yet they have come back. So it's these kinds of stories that we have to lift up and let folks know that you don't have to stay in the rut. You don't have to stay there. With me, it was my faith, and I don't. Everybody may not be a Christian. You may be something else, but I think there's always something that you got to hold on to. There's always something that you got to believe in. And if you believe in it and your faith is strong enough, then you can get through it. And that's what I share. That's what I talk about.
Thank you for that. And there's loads I want to follow up on in relation to what you said. The first thing that occurred to me was just if someone were to ask your opinion about gambling now, if let's say there's a young person and they're, I don't know, starting gambling or perhaps getting into the habit, what would you say to them about your position on that?
Well, number one, I would say I'm not totally against gambling. I'm against someone who becomes unfocused. If you stay focused, you can handle a lot of things. But if you allow yourself to to uh, become overpowered, or you get to the point where you can't control yourself, or you feel that coming on, if it begins to be a love more than something that you just do every once in a while, but when you started feeling that urge that I cannot seem to give it up, then that's when you know you begin to get into a problem. Whether it's gambling or whether it's alcoholism or whatever it might be, you're running the same kind of risk. I give an example in my book where I talked about uh, somebody, if on Fridays you find yourself got to go to a poker game every Friday and you're going to stay there the whole weekend, and your wife wants to go to a movie, or your son or daughter has a game that Saturday, and you make some excuse to go to your poker game rather than taking your wife to the movie or your kids to the softball or whatever game it is, then you need to check yourself. You need to step back because something is wrong. That's the kind of concept I'm talking about. I don't gamble. I just gave it all up. But I'm not totally against somebody who say they'll take a drink, or they're gonna buy a lottery ticket. That's purely their choice. But I just say watch yourself. That's why I have a watch yourself, and that's just the way I approach it. Now let me say this, because uh, I came to the conclusion in my second book that I was not a compulsive gambler. And you probably wonder, well, why did you say that earlier? In the beginning, I thought I was, but I call uh, a gambling anonymous group here in uh, Chapel Hill, and I told them I wanted to come over and talk with the guys because I had gone through the situation and I wanted to let them know that there was still hope. And the first thing the director asked me was, it says, "Do you are you still are you still a compulsive gambler?" I said no. And the fact of it, I was telling the truth. I I stopped gambling when this happened to me and I went to the mental hospital. That ended it. I said anything that does this to me, caused me to lose my law license, caused me to find myself in a mental hospital, caused me to find myself going to prison, I'm finished. No more drinking, no more gambling. I'm finished with it. So when he said that to me, I said, no. He said, well, I don't think the guys would be interested in talking with you because they believe that once a compulsive gambler, always a compulsive gambler. I knew that was not me. So in my second book, I really started dealing with it. My second book I talked about is the Deal by Me, uh, a second edition, self-evaluation. I did this inter reflection, I guess would be the best way to say it. And I thought what I was, what my real problem was, is that I was afraid to fail, afraid to fail. I had been this youngest, uh, first only African American lawyer in my hometown, the youngest African American lawyer practicing in the state of North Carolina at the time. My pride had gotten the best of me. I thought that I was on top of the world, and I could not handle going down. I could not handle what I was into, and I did something that was just outright crazy and stupid. And so rather than being a compulsive gambler, as I thought I was more afraid to fail, FAIL. And that was the conclusion that I came to when I did this introspection of my own life.
Would you say there's maybe some self-sabotage going on there?
Tell me exactly what you might mean.
So almost unconsciously, I'm going to do this thing, whatever it might be, because of that failure, the fear of failure that you were mentioning. So I don't have to deal with what's ahead of me. I'm going to do this
I think so.
to ensure.
I think so. Mainly because when you say it like that, because I had also contemplated suicide. As a matter of fact, the morning that I did it, I had taken the pistol with me to my office and sat there contemplating it very serious. But I'm an only child to a single mom, and I was thinking about my mom, and I couldn't do that. I just abandoned it. I couldn't think of I couldn't think of the possibility of just doing that to my mom. So that was so to answer your question, you probably are correct in that assumption.
So, for the sake of others, let's say there's someone who, let's say they have a big fear of failure and they, whether consciously or not, they feel like they're about to self-sabotage. What do you say to them?
Well, one of the things that always say, and I tell this to my cousins, I had one who's now just ran and was elected to the Board of Education here in Durham. And I say to him, one, stay focused, and two, stay ethical. If you will do those two things, I honestly believe everything else will fall in place. You have to stay focused. You got to know who you are and where you want to go. And if you can do that, you're okay. And if you're ethical, and I don't, and that ethical line means honesty, showing some integrity, maintaining good character, holding up your reputation. All of this is a part of that ethics that I try to encompass as I talk about it. And so that's what I would really say. You don't want to go into a whole lot of other things because people kind of forget all this stuff. Just keep your mind on where you're going. And don't let other little stuff sidetrack you because if you do, you'll find yourself going down a rabbit hole, and then you be too far in, and then something happens. That's when you find yourself maybe do a favor for a friend. That's where the ethics comes in, or you're going to siphon a little money off the side, that ethics comes in. Yeah, all of this type stuff is what happens when you find yourself uh, in those kind of situations. So I just say, stay focused and stay ethical. And if you do that, I think you can basically make it. I don't even get into all other stuff.
Well, thank you for that. The next part that you said about your story was that you had to serve some time as a result of the fear of failure, essentially. It's a two-part question. The first part is around, what's it like? Because I think most people have, TV and film references, but don't necessarily know what the real thing's like. And the second part is around what you tell others, because you've spoken to people who are, you're past all that now, you're in a better place, but you've spoken to people who are on death row. And it's particularly interesting because my perception, anyway, is that they don't have a lot of hope if they're in that position. So, what do you make of that?
You know, I have a very good friend who wrote a book, and he does prison ministry, a lot of it, and particularly on death row. And he wrote a book about finding joy on death row. So I'm saying that because sometimes you think that you don't have hope, but you find that many of them have more hope than you think. You know, they've come to the realization to the point it could be either one way or the other. They know that they are guilty, and so they have accepted that fate. And sometimes that brings them to a situation of faith. You know, uh, that kicks in. Acceptance of responsibility kicks in. There are others who are there who may have not been deserving of what they've received, but there's still some hope because they're still hanging on to the fact that one day somebody's going to realize through DNA or something that I'm just not guilty of this. So that hope has to always be there. So surprisingly, they have more hope than some of us think who are on the outside. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that you don't go through your depressed times. You don't go through these moments of wishing I was out or wanting to know what other folks are doing. Uh, Now I have to tell you, my confinement was not bad. I was in federal prison, so being in federal prison for me at that time was not like it is now, because now if you got a 15-year sentence, you're going to have to serve at least about 2/3 or 80% of that time. When I went in, if you got a 15-year sentence and you maintain good behavior, what have you, you can get out with a third of your time, which means 5 years and you're out. Okay, so it's much different. At the same time, I got no write-ups. I was a model inmate. And as a result of being a model inmate, I got a lot of privileges. Okay. I worked in the warden's office. I worked in the education building. I was assistant to the teacher. I was a part of the prison fellowship ministry. When I tell people this, they don't believe it, but it is the actual truth. I got a chance to leave the prison on 3 occasions, going to prison fellowship seminars. On one of the occasions, I flew out by myself, no escort or nothing. The prison warden trusted me to leave and come back, which I did. So I so I'm saying that all to say, you know, I was that type of inmate because my thought pattern had changed when I was in the mental hospital. So when I went in, I had already made my mind up that I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'm not gonna get in any trouble. I'm gonna be this model inmate because I'm getting out of here and I know what I've got to do. That's where I was. That was my concept. So when I went in, I wasn't in there with a different kind of mindset. I was in there to do what I needed to do. I get this behind me because when I come out, I'm gonna move forward. That's where my thought pattern was. Now, I can't say that everybody's thought pattern was like that. There are some in there who knew that who didn't care, who didn't care whether they got out. It didn't make any difference. They were what you call the uh, what's the word for them when I get out? I know I'm coming back. It's not gonna make it, recidivism or whatever it is. So, but for a lot, so you can't put. I guess my point is, you can't put all of them in the same boat. Some are different, and some are not different. And it's interesting that the administrators sometimes want to put all of you in the same boat. And I'm going to tell you why I'm saying that. When I got transferred to the camp administrator, as I was getting ready to leave, I had a conversation with the camp administrator. He was talking with me, and I told him, I said, look, I know I messed up, but I promise you I won't be back here. This is it. I'm finished. And you know what he told me? I wrote this in the book. He told me, these are the words he said. He said, yeah, everybody said that. That stuck with me. That's what he said. Everybody says that. And his concept was that you're no different than everybody else. You get back out, you're gonna do the same thing, you're gonna be right back in here. But I knew that I was not. So that's what kind of goes on. But you've got to be the person. So I tell people all the time that people who go in, you it's about the individual. The system not going to change you. I know we think that on the outside that we give you 10 years, that's going to make a difference in your life. The system is not going to change you. That change has to come from you, the inside person. If you don't do it, the system can forget it. They think they can give you 5 years and you're gonna be a different person. Or they can give you 10 years, you're gonna be a different person. All they're doing is taking you away from society. And that's part of what it's all about. And there's no problem with that. If they think you're going to change, the system can't really habilitate you. That part is going to have to come from you. So they think they can put you in so that you can be rehabilitated. No. Now, that's my belief. Now, I'm not telling you that that's the right belief, but for everything I've experienced and the guys that I've been around and the guys that I've talked to, and I've been back in the prison system doing workshops and talking, doing seminars. I did about, even since I've been here in Durham, I've done about 5 to 6 years going into the Federal Correctional Institution on a regular basis, once a week, doing seminars. So I've been around them. I know the thought patterns. I know how they feel, and so when I talk about it, it's based upon the experience and from my own experience. And so just to share that with you, that's it.
Oh, well, you mentioned your seminars. Do you have any favorite story when you've gone and spoken to, either someone in maximum security or on death row where they've got your message and you've changed them, or anything that comes to mind there?
Well, the key thing is I've only been on death row once. So I have my friend who is also a minister here in Orange County. He does regular ministry on death row. I've only been on a death row once, so I cannot really talk about that. And I have not done a lot of ministry in state prison, so I understand that's a little different. My ministry was in federal prison. I've been out to Kansas. I was a prison fellowship, uh, what we call instructor for years. So I've been over to different prisons. And so one of the things that, in answer to your question, you can't be in contact with inmates once they get out, especially when they're on probation. They have to be, you have to, certain time has passed, they'd be off the probation. And then they might contact you, but by that time, they're forgotten. All information they knew about you is gone. So I can't say from that, but I can say that there are some, while I was in and talking with them, you can sense that they're going to be okay. Okay. And then there are others you can sense that they're just in the session just to kind of get away and to have something else to do. So,
Mm.
and they're not serious at all. You really can sense that. And I've had that experience. There's some that I just knew when they got out, They they were not going back. But then there are some that I just knew that they just was just in the session to get this hour credit. They give them a little credit for this, for attending the seminar. Get that credit, look pretty good on their records, but that's about it. So to answer your question, I'm not sure that I can give you a clear answer on that.
Well, sometimes you don't always get the feedback, right? But if you do it enough and you got a good message, I'm sure that you've helped at least a certain number of people. Maybe not everyone, like you said. Some of the change comes from within, but
Yeah,
when you're doing good work, I mean, you don't always get to know. But
yeah.
I did want to ask you about your books because 3 books is congratulations on becoming an author and writing multiple books. In terms of who it's for and what people would expect to get from perhaps the Deal by Me book, or perhaps the volume 2 as well.
The
What
first
would you say?
book, they will get a lot of encouragement, I believe. I think they will be very inspired because I tell my story from my law practice, my prison experience, and my ministry experience. So, and I weave it all together so that they can understand it. Mental health, uh, my time in the mental hospital. Uh, so I think when they read it, and I've gotten lots of feedback on it, they will be very encouraged, and I think it is very inspiring. And not only that, just a good read. Okay, and I've gotten that kind of response from it. And that's the first book, which is Deal by Me, A Golden Opportunity Blown. And a lot of people ask me, well, how did you come up with that title? The Deal by Me came from my poker playing. When you don't want your next hand, you said deal by me, or you don't want your next card, deal by me. So and it entails I'm finished, no more. Okay, so that's the deal by me. Golden opportunity blown had reference to my law practice. I just blew my whole practice, so a golden opportunity blown. That was my first book, Deal by Me, subtitle Golden Opportunity Blown. The second book, I get very lots of comments also, but it's more of a reflection book. What I learned from what I went through. It's like I told the story in the first book, but in Deal by Me, second edition, a self-evaluation, I take this in what you call, I guess, in perspective, into perspective of my life. I do a self-evaluation, and I talk about what I learned from all that transpired uh, with my life in terms of the prison experience and what have you, and kind of shared in a way that uplifts and tell folks, some of the things you need to do. I talk about having a mentor. I talk about, a lot of other things. I talk about uh, the points that I kind of shared with you earlier about what I talked about. The darkest hour was just before dawn, confronting the source. And when I talk about stuff like an idle mind is a devil's workshop, play with fire and you will get burned. Practice humility, accept responsibility, talk about crime does not pay. If something is consuming you, step back from it, which had reference to my my gambling, you know. And I think I told you earlier, I said, don't let, your circumstances be an excuse. Those are some of the things I talk about in the second book. So, and that's more of, what I learned from it.
Well, thank you
The
for that. It sounds like a great positive message to have in your life. The other one was "Let Us Reason Together," which I do love that title. Would you like to share what that's about?
Yeah, well, let us reason together. After I became moderator of moderators for the General Baptist State Convention. And I've done quite a few things, but I must admit that I've been very blessed. And the president of General Baptist State Convention uh, appointed me as moderator of moderators. And that is, I was over all of the moderators. And what he wanted me to do, because of my legal background, is to deal with churches that may be going through some conflict among themselves, pastor and deacons, and primarily with Missionary Baptists. And so that book is based primarily on that because I dealt with certain conflict issues that congregations go through. It has been a blessing to me writing it because I've dealt with some of this. It helped me in dealing with a lot of situations, even my own pastorate. So that's basically what I talk about deacon and pastor's relationship. I talk about role of trustees and deacons. I talk about policy, what have you. So all of these different issues that bring about conflict in the church are matters that I discuss in that book. And I titled it, Come, Let Us Reason Together.
Like I said, I love the title. Is there anything that I should have asked you about today?
You have, all I want to say is that you've asked some really good questions. I hope I didn't take too long with trying to answer them, but I thought I wanted to be as succinct and I guess, but as clear as I possibly could be. So no, I think you've done a great job.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I said that the domain is dealbyme.com for the books. Is there anywhere else that people can follow you?
Yeah, you can follow me on at my website is Deal by Me, www.dealbyme.com. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course, you can get my books all from Amazon and also from the website. All of my books are there, and I think people will get them will be very pleased. And I know from what people tell me that they're going to really, really enjoy the read. Give you this one example, if I could. I had one of the ministers I was doing a book signing at one of the conventions, and he started reading the book, and he told me he didn't go to sleep that night. He had to finish reading it the whole night. So that's just it was really, really a very good read. So I encourage people to get it. It's encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming.
Well, that's good to hear as an author, right? So I bet that was nice feedback. In terms of closing thoughts for the episode, have you got anything you'd like to close with?
Not really. I just want to say to listeners of your podcast what I've always said to everybody, and that is stay encouraged, stay inspired. And my two favorite words, I say, and I've said it to you earlier, stay focused and stay ethical. I believe if you follow those principles, that life will be great. You're going to make it, you're going to survive, and you will thrive. And that's my closing remarks.
James, thank you for being a great guest today.
Thank you.